Welcome, everyone. My name is Randy Johnson. I'm with SpearMC, and I'm here to talk to you about a case study at one of our clients, Hackensack Meridian Health, where we implemented the mobile expenses solution on PeopleSoft. Talk about some of the pitfalls that we overcame and lessons learned, as well as a few screenshots. We don't. Ideally, we would have Kowaljet Alawaldia on the call. Kowaljet had a dentist appointment that had been scheduled quite a long time ago, which was in conflict, and so everything is screenshot today. No live demo, but I think you'll definitely get the picture, pun intended, of what the solution is entailed in at Hackensack Meridian Health. So. Without further ado, I will jump into the meat of the presentation. We're going to go through some introductions. I will introduce Hackensack, the team, as well as myself. And then let's talk about the story, right? The case study of what happened and what continues to evolve as Hackensack Meridian Health expands their mobile expenses solution to more and more features and functions. All right. So Gary Wood, my esteemed colleague, Vice President of Business Applications over at Hackensack Meridian Health, has been overseeing a PeopleSoft transformation now for at least 4 years, to my count. And as a result, we see Hackensack Meridian Health as a regular award winner in the Innovator Award series that Oracle has been granting, and Gary was a spearhead for removing the legacy expensibles system, which was quite expensive at a per expense report basis, and implementing a fully integrated PeopleSoft solution with PeopleSoft mobile expenses. Gary is normally one of the co-presenters and would give you a lot of background around the reasons behind going to expenses. I'll try to fill his void, but we do have recordings from previous sessions. This is, I think, our 4th instance. We keep being asked to come back and do this presentation. So if you are looking for more detail, certainly reach out to Gary or go back to some of the previous Quest recordings and you can hear Gary directly. And then there's myself, a younger version of me. You can see the actual version down in the corner there. My name's Randy Johnson, randall.johnson@spearmc.com. On the last slide, I even put my mobile number. I'm not afraid for you to pick up the phone and call me. I'm from Chicago, and hopefully my accent doesn't throw you off. I'm told I have a voice for radio. Maybe even a Casey Kasem celebrity sound-alike. Anyway, my focus has been for, oh my gosh, the bulk of my career now, PeopleSoft financials and ever-evolving product line. We see such great opportunities for modernizing the PeopleSoft footprint for our clients. Back to Hackensack, they are in New Jersey. They are one of the leading not-for-profit healthcare organizations in the state, and they have a very robust PeopleSoft footprint. They actually have 3 pillars. They have HCM, they have financials, and they have campus because they are a teaching hospital with a university association. So 3 pillars, fantastic PeopleSoft client, and as I mentioned, a regular recipient of the Innovator Awards. You might all remember Mark Weintraub. This is a picture of Gary and Mark as Gary was receiving one of his many, many Innovator Awards at, I think this is actually the one specifically for the expenses deployment back in don't know, it was a few years ago, pre-pandemic. About SpearMC, many of you, maybe most, have heard of us. I hope you have. We are an Oracle Platinum partner specializing in PeopleSoft. In fact, we show this slide a lot. I think this next slide maybe even tells a better story, because the center of everything we do is Oracle's PeopleSoft application suite, and we do offshoots of that. We Hyperion, OBIE, Analytics, actual Kibana, which is an extension of PeopleSoft into whatever BI platform you might have. But everything starts at the heart with our experience and expertise in the PeopleSoft product line. Again, that's across all pillars, right? So ELM, Enterprise Learning Management, Campus Solutions, Financials, and HCM, all are in our sweet spot. From that, we've emanated into managed services. A lot of these started as implementations or upgrades, where we continued to stick around and ultimately turned into a managed support. It includes technical managed support, functional managed support, hosting support through Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We even support other cloud solutions that we're not a reseller of those. So everything. I'll stop dwelling. Everything. If you think of Spear MC, think of us as PeopleSoft at our heart. One of the solutions, and there are many, but this one was something that Robin Valadium was keen on, is our road mapping service, which is a service that we really enjoy providing to our clients, in which we identify all of the features, functions, and opportunities that you have, that you may already own and haven't implemented, haven't discovered yet, and put them on a roadmap for execution, so that we can help you to get current, stay current, and really take advantage of all of the features and functions that are coming in waves. Each image that's released now more frequently than ever before. All right, so that's us. This is the third day. We've done most of these sessions already. We have 2 left this afternoon: chatbots and another case study, this one on PeopleSoft Test Framework and Spear MC's solution on the what we call the testing grounds, which is a PIA version of executing PTF and monitoring. Highly recommend you attend these next 2 sessions as emerging technologies that you may not yet have been aware of or are not yet taking advantage of. And then, of course, we have recordings that you, as members, can go back and look at for each of the previous day's sessions. There was a session yesterday. I'm going to touch on the training that we did at Hackensack. We built that in a tool that is Adobe Captivate. Yesterday we had at 5 p.m., I think it was 4 p.m. Central, a session on Oracle guided learning. So learning the right way, the right place, the right way. If you get a chance, check that out. This is I don't know, I guess we learned in that session the definition of Oracle guided learning and its place as it relates to the UPK tool. But it is a fantastic demo that was done by Marcus and Cameron that I'd like you to take a look at. Not to shortchange any of the other sessions, but this one in particular, we have a highlight later in my slide that I want to call out. All right, why are you here? You're here to listen and learn about our case study at HMH, Hackensack Meridian Health. You'll see us abbreviate that as HMH going forward. That is the client where we, among many clients, implemented mobile expenses. We think we did a particularly great job of attacking internal controls and enhancing systematic controls at Hackensack that I think was one of the key benefits. I'll describe that now. So why did we do it? There was a cloud-based solution that was already in place at Hackensack, but it wasn't very robust. It was not well integrated with PeopleSoft. It did not have the internal controls that Hackensack was really desiring and looking for. And it still upfront required paper activity. And by upfront, I mean for overall travel authorizations, approvals to go ahead and schedule trips and so forth. We're still somewhat disconnected and paper-driven, email-driven. And these were the driving factors. It also turns out it was a pretty expensive per expense report option for HMH. And looking at the PeopleSoft solution, the per expense report price was extremely affordable and provided the return on investment relatively quickly. All right. We knew there was going to be some change management. We knew that for a fact because there was also, when we were doing this project, a shift from classic to fluid. We knew that if we were going to enable mobile, we first needed to enable fluid, right? Those of you that have been doing PeopleSoft now for a while understand the difference, that mobile is not fluid and fluid is not mobile, but mobile is enabled by the move to fluid, right? You would want to go to fluid and then consider your mobile deployment. The other big change, and this was really across the board going from classic to fluid, was that people got hung up on their breadcrumbs. They're gone. I guess the phrase I would use in change management, be a benevolent dictator at times and just get over the fact that your breadcrumbs are gone and learn that it's not the end of the world, that there are many ways. In fact, in our Oracle guided learning demo, we show users how to navigate in new ways. Nav collections are awesome. We built those for the expenses tool set, but the nav bar is still there and it works just fine. We did want to focus on user groups when we built dashboards, right? The dashboards for expenses really came down to a couple of user groups, the executive leadership that needed to see dashboards related to the overall spend usage of the tool, but employees as well, and those employees that needed training, okay? And so you're going to see how we designed some dashboards and built the guided training for those users with the new, more user-friendly approach. All right. At the time, and I somewhat chuckled because when we did this implementation, it was pre-pandemic, and so the demand for expense reports was on the rise. HMH is growing; they continue to grow, and that growth was highlighting the fact that there were disparate business processes when it came to expense report processing. And it also highlighted the fact that the expensive per expense report price tag that HMH was incurring was growing right along with their growth. As it turns out, right when we finished our implementation, the pandemic hit and travel actually ground to a halt. So user adoption was not where it would have been in the normal business scenario. It will be picked up. We do have expense reports, and we've got several slides that show you user adoption. Most of them are cell phone reimbursements and light mileage right now. We aren't seeing the demand for the big ticket items like airfare and hotels as much, but they will come back. We are all certain that those will come back. Everyone wanted to be able to access from their phone, not just to create the expense report line, but take a picture of the receipt. That is a baseline requirement these days that needs to be met. And look, access from anywhere on any device at any time, that was key, right? I want to call out one very important detail with this mobile expenses deployment, or any deployment that is mobile and PeopleSoft connected. it is not an app that you install on your phone, right? When we're talking about mobile, we're talking about accessing the PeopleSoft environment logged on as a user from your mobile device, okay? It's not an offline app. It is actually logged on and using the PeopleSoft product using your phone. That's why fluid is so important, because once you get to your phone, those screens need to be fluid, or they don't render the way that they should on a mobile device. Okay, so that raised the concern of how do we authenticate users? How do we secure our users? How do we know that when they're accessing the system and logged onto PeopleSoft that it is a valid user? Given that our main ability to do this in the past was either you were on site within the firewall or you had a VPN connection from a mobile computer or home computer. So the solution was twofold. We obviously had to move to the fluid user interface. I said shown previously. I haven't shown that yet. That's coming. We deployed two-factor authentication. Now this was already being rolled out for any access to a HMH application, not just specific to PeopleSoft, but we were able to integrate the Duo two-factor authentication approach with a tool from Appsian. Okay, not sure if you've attended any of Appsian's presentations this week, but if you have not, I recommend going back to the recordings and take a look, take a listen. We believe that the combination of a two-factor MFA, multi-factor authentication tool set like Duo and Appsian's application security platform is the hardening that you need to be able to allow mobile access to the PeopleSoft platform. Okay, once we were able to do this two-step approach, we were within a month able to deploy Leader Self-Service. Within a week, we had a functioning prototype working, and all of this combined is what drove the Innovator Awards over at Oracle Open World back in 2018. Okay, so here are the screenshots. No live demo today. Here are our screenshots. If you haven't seen Fluid, I'd be shocked, but it's possible, I suppose, that you haven't seen Fluid yet. This is what it looks like. Tile-driven, homepage-driven. What we did was we built a couple of pages, a dashboard and a page. Okay, a page for expenses and a dashboard for the learnings. We'll see both of those in a few slides to come. But menu-driven. You could also go over and do the, I can't do it on this screen, but the nav bar to show you that the navigation, the menu path is still there. But the home pages, tiles, listen, that's the way to go, folks. These render spectacularly on mobile devices, any form factor, iPad, iPad mini, iPhone, Android, you name it. Okay, this is Fluid, and that was step one. This was underway before we even started the mobile expenses deployment. Okay, it needed to be finished before we did mobile expenses, which it was. We then said, if we're going to be accessing remotely, we're going to integrate Duo, which is a multi-factor authentication. HMH had a Duo enterprise account that was established. And so now anytime you log in remotely, or in fact, if you are accessing certain inside the firewall, certain sensitive pieces of data, we invoke the two-factor authentication to make sure it's really you. Okay. And so that happens. You get a push, or you get a call, or you get a passcode that you are asked to enter. You get each of those method options. Send me a push. I click approve. It's me. I'm in on my phone, on my mobile device, right? Enabled through the backbone of Appsian. So this mobile access is the Appsian setup. This is where you can determine the approved firewalls, IP sites, And then I haven't shown you all of the setup pages that go into it. Like I said, we got a prototype up and working within a week. So it isn't a extensively long effort, but what can take some time is deciding if you are authenticating through Appsian, through a outside firewall location, what restrictions do we want to put on your PeopleSoft access? For example, at Hackensack, we decided we're going to go ahead and allow users to go to the mobile approval, workflow approval pages and do approvals. We're going to allow users to go in and create expense reports and attach receipts. But there are other activities like any level of printing that we're simply going to disable. There's no print capability when you're accessing through Appsian and the two-factor authentication, because we don't want the ability to accidentally print to a local printer and have sensitive data sitting on a printed form waiting for you to show up in the office. So that feature and function has been turned off all through the configuration that we did with the Appsian setup in that initial prototype. In fact, the prototype is exactly what we ended up going live with in production. So we were pretty proud of ourselves at getting that right up front. Okay, more screenshots of the process. This is where you determine through the Appsian setup which two-factor provider you have. We picked the Duo option. These are your typical two-factor providers that are out there, and got it turned on with the challenge. It works spectacularly, as you saw in the screen before. All right, let me pause. So that was how we enabled A, fluid, and B, mobile access, so that users could then log on, do their thing in expenses, add attachments from their phone. You literally, when you're on the expense line, you add an attachment, you take a picture, and the attachment is uploaded. It's that simple. It's like just about any SaaS product out there that is expenses related. Okay. The other feature, and this is actually after our original implementation. It was deployed, I think, early in 2020. We originally wanted to implement Oracle Maps. We looked at it. We investigated the effort. There was surprising new costs. I shouldn't say surprising. There were new costs that were associated with it that we hadn't accounted for, and it was the version that was available at the time just didn't work for us. It was not as seamless as Google Maps seemed to be. And there, unfortunately, is not a delivered integration with Google Maps. And so we built one. And it's pretty slick. So, and this is where, if I had Kowalczyk on the line, we could have him actually do a live demo and show you. There's two expense types that we've got out there. So in this expense type, it is a mileage office to office. And what's brilliant here is we've got already set in the system, as you can see, there's these drop down, these lookups, right? Where all of the office locations HMH has where you could possibly travel from point A to point B are all listed. You simply pick one, and then you pick the other one, the two that you're traveling from and to, and you can insert third and fourth office segments if your day had you running around from building to building or location to location. You calculate the GPS distance. This is where we invoke Google Maps. And based on the predefined sites, it calculates the amount. We know based on our expenses set up for this category type that the reimbursement rate is 56 cents a mile. And we know then that the reimbursement for this is based on the miles. Okay, so whatever that amount is, it looks like I don't know, about $20, let's just say, is what the calculation is going to be for this particular day for this particular office to office. The other option is mileage that is just straight up mileage, where you pick your locations, you type your locations from Google Maps, and then when you calculate the GPS distance, it actually creates behind the scenes a picture of the map itself. And that becomes your attachment, your receipt, if you will, for that particular travel expense. So there's many folks who do home visits, nurses who do home visits, and they go from home to home to home, and each one of those is entered as line items on their expense report. Each one is backed up with that image, that picture of the Google Map as the receipt, and then they would simply send, and voila, they've got an expense line with an attachment. We don't require attachment for office to office because these are all predefined distances. I want to call out that HMH has an enterprise license agreement with Google. They're migrating to Google for most of their core applications. So moving away from Microsoft Office and moving to the Google Suite for Docs and Sheets. Clearly, they are never going to be able to abandon completely the applications in Microsoft because of their business partners and needs to communicate. But there is a relationship there with Google. And so if you're interested in doing the Google Maps integration, know that it can be done. It is a customization, and there may be a fee to associate your Google Enterprise account with the expenses module. I think my next slide actually just highlights my the two segments and the GPS distance. I didn't get a slide of the other mileage that shows the actual receipt of the map, but I think you've probably all been out on Google Maps at least once in your life. You get it. There's a picture of point A and point B. That's your evidence. Okay, on to the training. So the training, our implementation predated the Oracle Guided Learning toolset, but we knew that UPK was, there was no new content being developed. It appeared at the time that it was going to be a deprecated product. Hackensack did use UPK fairly extensively. For this particular implementation, what we ended up doing is this, by the way, this is the homepage for expenses, okay? And on that homepage, we have travel authorization, learning, expenses, and approvals, okay? A user that is system-wide and does setup would see this tile, and a user that is in the approval chain would see the approval tile. All right. Let me talk about a few of these before I get into the learning segment. One of the requirements for HMH was to get pre-approval for big ticket items for travel. Okay. Think of it as getting a purchase order before a voucher shows up to pay for airfare or for hotels. And so the requirement was that we implement the travel authorization feature of mobile expenses, and we hardened that. So the way that it's delivered, you create a travel authorization. It's basically your approval to travel, but there's no hard requirement to match that travel authorization to the ultimate expense report. And so like a purchase order that doesn't get matched to a voucher, it may sit out there forever, and you just have to do cleanup after a certain period of time. What HMH decided to do was require a travel authorization for big ticket items like airfare and hotel, okay? And as it turns out, these are also the ticket items that are centrally billed, so paid for by the HMH Central card. The key here was we required this for any travel that required those expense types, and then when you go to do an expense report, if you have those expense types, but you don't have an associated travel authorization, well then, the expense report approval hierarchy flips straight to the executive VP of your organization. In other words, if your normal expense report would have gone to just your manager and maybe one level higher, because you submit an expense report that is breaking the policy, you actually invoke having the executive VP take a look at your expense report. Hopefully that is the deterrent that is out there. One of the great learnings then that we built was how to initially create your expense report from a travel authorization, right? So if you've got those travel authorizations out there, you can create an expense report and later tie in the travel authorization, but it's a whole lot easier to copy it like you do in accounts payable when you copy a purchase order into the accounts payable voucher. All of the coding, all of the information is already there. It gets pulled down for you, okay? That was one of the trainings that we built. These trainings, let me go back to that now. No, let me not. Let me talk about the expenses down here. This expenses is actually a link to a dashboard. You can enter your expense reports from this dashboard page, but also as leaders, you could see a whole bunch, and I'm going to go through a number of analytics that are built around these expense reports, either by department or across the organization as a whole. So I am unable to show you that drill down. I don't think we have a screenshot of it. The next slide is going to show you what it looks like to create an expense report using the recorded feature. So when we go into this learning tab, it's a nav collection, a navigation collection. And everything in the navigation collection is a link to these MP4 recording videos, all right? And that's what I'm going to show you here now. Hopefully this recording will work. Let me give it a shot. Yeah. The recording plays, the user learns how it is that they access the environment. They're going to go into their expenses. Here they're going to create an expense report. You can view your historical expense report history. And by the way, if you have a recurring one, you might want to just use the copy feature. I've got a monthly cell phone. I'm going to copy last month's and I'm going to do it this way, okay? This steps you through each of the processes required. Because we copied it from a previous month, everything, including the category and the amount, are there. It does not copy the attachment receipt from the previous expense report, so one has to be added per policy. If we were on a phone, you would see an opportunity to just take a picture from your phone. Because we did the recording from a computer, the picture needs to be a file that's stored locally on my computer. We take it, that picture gets copied and attached, and up it goes. Right? On to the review and submit. Everything looks good. Submit. We're good. We highlighted our call out over the warning message or your agreement message. This brings you to the end of the recording. Okay, so much like UPK, these are playable. They're plugged in to PeopleSoft via the navigation collection and stored as an MP4. This is one option. Since we built these, the Oracle Guided Learning tool has evolved. So again, I highly encourage you, I mentioned it at the beginning, to go out and take a look at actually, I think Kaiser Permanente also had a presentation yesterday, ironically at the exact same time for Central, where they talk about I think they were the instigator of OGL. They were one of the main designers and the first implementer of OGL. So take a look at both of those and see if it's right for you. Certainly we think Adobe Captivate is a great add-in. You don't need a license if you're not going to be authoring the recording, because once it's produced as an MP4 that can be played back. All right. So this is how we handled our fairly large change management approach to training because we knew the rollout was going to be over time. And we couldn't man the live training sessions. This gave users the ability to consume the training as needed, perhaps simply just when they had their own expense reports. Maybe they only do 1 or 2 a year. Okay, on to the business case. One of the driving reasons for doing this project was the cost per expense report for the existing solution. There was a savings of almost, I think it was $3 per expense report as soon as we could stop using the old tool and start using the PeopleSoft tool. Our projections were to have a payback within a year, but the aforementioned pandemic actually caused us to have far fewer expense reports than we normally saw in the typical period of time, even though HMH employee count is growing and the hospitals are increasing, and the need for expense reports, you would think, would have increased along with that. The pandemic slowed it down. We didn't have the requests for airfare and hotel that we'd had in the past. So the payback is going to take a little longer. It's still there. We're still saving every single expense report. It's just happening at a slower rate right now, but we expect that will pick up as we all hope this pandemic is behind us. Back in 2020, and again, look at this date, we were right into 2020 as we're starting to gather this information. Our expense report counts were going up. The travel requests, note, we would have expected this to be not equal, right? We don't require a travel authorization for mileage. We don't require it for the cell phone reimbursement. It's the big ticket items, and that's why the TAs were way down compared to what we had expected, but we still had some. We still had a number of travel authorizations that were out there. Again, expect that number to balloon as the pent-up demand to go to live user conferences next year will be met. We're so excited for that to happen. The analytics and the dashboards that are out there now for our leadership to consume, understanding all of the expense reports in their status. There's actually parameters driving these in the background that you can set on a user by user basis in terms of the date duration or which particular values. This is a pivot grid on the dashboard. So hopefully you've all learned about pivot grids and what they can do. Our dashboard is exclusively built on PeopleSoft pivot grids and queries on the expenses and the travel authorizations themselves. Here's our expense creation trend, so you can see that it did spike up. It's hovering around here. It's growing at a somewhat linear basis. We expect it to be exponential as the travel picks up in 2022. More expenses that were created and submitted. So you see a whole bunch that are created as templates so that they can be copied over and over again. These are those that are submitted for approvals, and these are the approval. So right now it looks like at this point in time about 300. We're sitting there waiting for approvals, whether they were pushed back for more details, additional attachments, or the manager hasn't figured out how to access the remote application yet. Whatever the case, there's some in process that at this point in time needed to be approved, and all of our submission, approval, and creation over time, we're seeing basically the same lines in user adoption. More that we see across the board. These are the business units that have rolled out. So we actually started we started in IT. That was our original, because that was a friendly group. But we rolled it out then to the majority of the business units out there. And so now we're seeing who's doing the traveling and who's not, and where we're getting a lot of these are in mileage and small dollar reimbursements. By summary, again, all of our, and this is our user adoption rate. This ROI, this is where we had hoped for a earlier forecast. Now we're thinking that forecast is probably getting closer to our worst case scenario. But look, that just means less total dollars are being spent on expense reports right now than were being spent at the high watermark burn rate, right? We are still saving on each and every expense report generated. So the benefits are continuing to flow in. They're just not getting paid off in our ROI as quickly as if we had had that level of expense report generation continue. Okay, our forecast, this is where we start to show an exponential gain. We don't go out further than 2023, but if we did, you'd see this. We didn't have a tall enough graph to show you the exponential growth that we're projecting. That is driven by our belief that travel will resume, as well as our belief that HMH will continue to grow in the way that they've been growing in the region. Okay, a bunch of summaries by status. I think you get it. We've got a whole bunch. Travel authorizations, travel requests, right? I mentioned there were only 106 out there. Several of them still looking to be approved. They're pending. 5 of them got denied, right? 56 of them got approved. Everyone who got these approved will learn how to copy that travel authorization into their expense report so that they can then submit for reimbursement in this case, or to have it coded appropriately and have the travel authorization closed out. Here's some quick, I think, lessons learned. I think even in the title we talk about Twilio, and it was on the verge of being implemented. And we realized that we didn't need it. And my apologies to anyone out there who was hoping for a detailed walkthrough of Twilio. If you are interested, please reach out, because SpearMC has Twilio set up in our own demo environment, and I can give you a demo of that tool set. Twilio is a third-party tool that you engage with. You have a subscription with Twilio to use your cell phone to take pictures and text them to PeopleSoft. The idea is that this would be used if you are not connected to the PeopleSoft application. We realized we're always going to be doing expense reports on our phone when we are connected to the PeopleSoft application. And that was why we didn't need the Twilio text feature. Twilio text feature is needed if you are not going to have users authenticate with their mobile device and connect to PeopleSoft. And what happens then is they take a picture of their receipt and they send it to a text number. Their phone number, their mobile device phone number, is associated with their user account in PeopleSoft. And that's how it gets married up with your account in expenses. The next time you are in PeopleSoft and log in, there are receipts that are out there waiting to be attached to expense lines that you add on your expense report, okay? They're sitting in a tool called My Wallet. So they're out there and they're waiting to be attached. That's the cool feature. And there are now new features that are being deployed by Oracle for PeopleSoft Twilio that are push text features. So if you're thinking workflow from a email perspective, there are now options if you have a Twilio account to send email, or not email, text notifications via workflow. Hey, you've got a journal entry to approve, or whatever your workflow routings might be. You can opt to have Twilio send you, push you a text update that you have those workflow items waiting for your attention. We have not implemented any of that in our demo environment. The only Twilio integration we have is the text receipt feature. Okay, I mentioned Oracle Maps. We evaluated it, looked at it in depth, and rejected it and opted to move to the Google Maps solution that I showed you. We wanted to roll it out in waves. It was appropriate. The good news is that there was no burning platform other than cost savings to get off of the old tool. And so we could introduce the new tool and simply stop using the old one, business unit by business unit, group by group. And that allowed us to make sure that we had the right business requirements captured, the right internal controls in place, and roll that out in waves. All right. It also allowed Hackensack to do that rollout without incurring extensive consulting costs, because once we got that prototype rolled out, and the trainings that they all understood and received from a project team perspective, they were able to take that and roll it out to the rest of the organization. I mentioned that we used Adobe Captivate. We thought that worked great because MP4s are portable, and they can be attached into a navigation collection, as you saw. There are, quote, guided learning functions, but it's not really guided learning like what Oracle guided learning is. You're not in the tool. You are simply instructed to click on a dummy page. And for those that are tactile learners, it's a good way to learn. But OGL is literally guided learning. If you are playing it while you're entering a real expense report, you're creating a real expense report with guided support. So Adobe Captivate, great if all you need is the MP4. Guided learning if you want users to have that helping hand throughout the transaction process. And then dashboards, highly recommend tracking user adoption. It helps to bolster. I don't know how many of you have business cases that you have to come up with that prove you have a return on investment. And for those that do, I don't know how many go back and actually prove that the return happened. That is a business practice at HMH. It's followed, and they have the dashboards and the tools to prove that the project is a success, and it will be a net contributor to the organization in the future. Okay, I'm at the last slides, the question slides. I promised that my mobile number would be on the last slide. It is. That's my email. That's my mobile number. I am going to go to the chat window now, and we have about 10 minutes by my watch to take questions. If there are any questions, type them in the chat window, and I will address them. I see no questions. I'll give you a few more minutes. You might not be doing this right. Does everyone see the chat? Well, either you're all incredibly shy or you're trying and chat isn't working. I commit to you that if you reach out to me by mobile or by my email, if you have questions, more than happy to respond. If you are interested in seeing a live demo, either of SphereMC's demo environment that includes the Twilio feature, or if you are interested in seeing more of what they have at HMH, reach out to me and I will coordinate an introduction. The user community is a phenomenal PeopleSoft user community, and as you've seen, the HMH team has had their innovations and their wins. So they are certainly a group that I think you should get acquainted with. I can make that introduction anytime you want. There's my number. There's my email. If there are no questions and I see none in the chat, then I think we'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I will, I suppose, end